Welcome to the second session of CHINTARO training. In the last session, we had a look at clients, and in this session, we'll be having a look at properties. From the home screen, we can go into Properties, and we see our Properties submenu. To get to our Properties search screen, we click on Manage Properties. This Properties search screen works in the same way that our client search screen works. In this demonstration, we only have a few properties, but you will most likely have many more properties than this. Properties can be set up in a number of different ways. If you have a rooming house model, or you have properties that have a number of different rooms with multiple tenancies, you will set up one property with multiple tenancies. If you have properties such as houses where you have single tenancies, you will set up each property with one tenant in them. You may also have houses or properties with multiple tenancies such as shared housing, for example with two tenancies. Generally, if there is a house or a unit, each is created as their own property. If there is a rooming house with one property and lots of different rooms, we will create the one property with multiple rooms in it. If it is a single property with multiple rooms for tenancy, we will create one property with multiple rooms. So rooms in CHINTARO are not rooms per se, they are not four walls and a doorway. A room is also known as a tenantable unit. This can be a bit confusing. The reason it is like this is that CHINTARO was originally developed 15 years ago as a rooming house program, so most properties had lots of rooms in them. But what they mean today is a tenantable unit or ability to have a tenancy. So let's go in and have a quick look at one of our existing properties. Here we have a property at Rogan 115. This screen is similar to the client screen in that we have the general information on the left-hand side, which is all of the information about the property. In the middle here, we have the information about the rooms in the property, and like we said before, if you have properties that just have one tenancy in each property, you will just create one room for each property. And we can see that 115 Rogan Street is one of those properties. We can see this here because it has 3 bedrooms. But we have set this up as a house with one tenancy agreement, and the property is currently occupied by Shane McGowan. On the right, we have a section for our tags and alerts and some other tagged functions, which we will have a look at in detail when we add a property shortly. We also have a notes section down the bottom here. The notes section for properties works in exactly the same way as notes on the client records do. The difference is these notes are about the property. These notes will stay with the property regardless of who the tenants are, and as the clients come and go as tenants, these notes will stay with the property. So if it is a note about a person, we make a client note. If it is a note about a property, then we make a property note. And they work in exactly the same way. So if we double click on a note, we can pretty much see the same screen as we did for client notes, with all of the print and email functions, action fields, and so on. And we have the property functions at the top here. So let's go in and add a new property now, and we will go through this in the same way that we did with clients. So let's go back to the previous screen, and we will add a new property by clicking the Add Property function at the top here. This brings up the empty property screen. So we will be adding a new property at 3 Lygon Street in Carlton. So the property name we will put as Lygon 3. The reason that we put the property name in this way is that generally you'll have a lot of properties, and when we want to find them on the previous screen, we want to be able to sort them easily. The easiest way to sort these properties is in alphabetical order by the street name. So we will put the address as number 3, Lygon Street, and that's in Carlton. Now, if we go back to the previous screen, we can see our new property is alphabetically listed. If we were to sort by the street name, the numbers are what comes first. So if you have a number of units at number 3 Lygon Street, you may have 1 of 3, 2 of 3, 3 of 3, and so on. They will all be dotted around, so we want to keep them nicely sorted together. If the property does have an actual name, such as a named building, you can call it by this name, or you may have your own name for it, and you could just enter that in the property name field. Setting the property name in this way is just a recommendation. The account number and community partnerships and growth number are two fields that are registration numbers for this property that might be linked to other systems or other registers. So if you have been given a property in South Australia, you will put the CPG number in this field here. If you have a property from DHS or another organisation, they may have a number for that property, and if so, you can enter the number in either of these account number fields. If you do not have a need for these fields, just leave them empty. I will stress this as we enter the details on the screen. If there is a field that is not relevant to your program, just leave it blank. Okay, let's move on to region. So the region is a place where we can go to group our properties into regions, and we will say that this property is in the north. The online date is a bit like the registration date for the client. It is defaulted to today's date, and this is usually the date that we took possession of the property. So if you are building your own properties, this will be the date that the property is first available. If you are getting your properties from the state government or New Zealand government, then you'll be putting the date that you took possession of the property in here. Similarly, the return date will be the date you gave it back if you get to that stage. So when we talked about clients, we talked about target groups where a person would fall into a particular target group. In the same way, some of your properties might be set aside for specific target groups, and if this is the case, you can pick an option from this list. I'm not going to pick something from this list because this property is just general and it will not be set aside for a particular target group. The next field we see is the drop-down for program, and this is particularly important for properties and tenancies. Program is all of the different streams of your business. So you may be operating a rooming house section. You may also have a women's housing section. You could have some crisis housing or transitional housing, whatever that may be. You can split the parts of the business up and enable you to run reports and look at different parts of the business in this way. So let's say that this property is going to be set aside for the aged care division, so we will select aged care from the list. Program, like any drop-down list in CHINTARO, can be changed to suit your organisation. The property type field is where we record what type of property this is, and this is a townhouse. Then we have the construction type for the property, and this is a brick veneer. There are 2 bedrooms, and the land area is 200 square metres. There are 2 toilets. The valuation of the property is $600,000. It has 1 bathroom. Valuations of your property will most likely be annual, so let's put in the 24th of the 6th, 2015 as the last valuation date. If you are in South Australia, this will be automatically done by the CPG Venture Register update. If you're not in South Australia, you might want to be entering in your valuations regularly when they're done. The Charge To field is a date that the property is charged to, and we're going to leave this one blank for now. So this property has no garage, but it does have a carport space for one car. The next field we see is the property manager. The property manager is a way of allocating responsibility for this property to a single person, and this may be a property or tenancy manager within your organisation. It may also be an external body. And for example, if you have a property that is remote from your organisation, a real estate agent may look after the maintenance or something there. So let's allocate a property manager and we'll select Gary Morris. Similarly, we have a field for property owner and we will say that this property is owned by Elvis Presley. One of these options may be the State Housing Authority, so you will just select the relevant owner in here. There are a number of reports in CHINTARO that we can run for owners of properties, so if you are managing properties on behalf of other people, you can produce different reports and statements for those people. The next field is the head contractor field. We're going to talk about maintenance in a future session, but if we have someone who is responsible for all of the maintenance in the property, you may want to put them in here. For example, in the Northern Territory, this is Territory Housing, who handle most of the maintenance for properties. If you are responsible for organising contractors for maintenance, just leave this blank. For certain accounting systems that interface with CHINTARO, you could load your financial information straight into CHINTARO, and to do this, we would need to put a cost centre here, but we won't worry about this one for now. Funding is a field where we can keep track of how our properties are funded. We again won't put anything against this one because we don't use funding in our organisation. Project code is an all-purpose field again, and we're not going to use this one today. There is no specific use for project code. It is just so you can put your own values in if there's something that you want to put into the property screen, but is not a field already listed. Nomination rights is a situation where another organisation has the right to say who goes into this property when it's vacant. Again, we'll leave this one blank for now. Strata company is yet another field that we will leave for now. And then we come to a number of fields here for hot water type, stove type, and heating type. And in this property, all three of these are electric. We're going to leave the sewerage as mains, the power as mains, and the water as mains. These fields could be useful for including on work orders. When we are creating a work order for a tradesperson, we might want to put that information on there so they know what the property has before they go out to the property. The comments section is similar to the comments on clients in that if there is something else you would like to add that hasn't been covered, we can put it in the comments section here. So as I mentioned before about rooms, we need to put rooms in CHINTARO before we can tenant anyone in this property. I will stress again that the word room does not necessarily mean one room, it really means a tenantable unit. So we are going to have one tenancy in this property and we will create one room. If later on we wanted this to be a shared property, we might add more rooms, and this would mean that this property would be able to house two tenants or have two tenancy agreements within one property. For the moment, we'll just add one room, so we click on Add Room. Then we get this pop-up screen, which has 4 fields on the left-hand side and 4 on the right. On the left, we have a field for the room number, and this relates to a rooming house whereby you would put the number of the room in here. In this case, because this is not a rooming house, we'll leave this blank. The next field is type, and we have to enter in a type. This is because we have to put something on the form to save this room details record. So before we said that this is a 2-bedroom townhouse, and that's what we will select from our list. We can also allocate nomination rights at the room level, just like we can for the property. We'll have a look at the payment book ID when we have a look at tenancies and payments, so we'll leave this one for the moment also. So below this, we can see that the status of the room is vacant tenantable. This means that there is no one in the room, it is vacant, and it is tenantable. We can put someone in the room and create the tenancy. The current tenancy status is not tenanted because we've just created it. On the right-hand side, we have the inspection fields, and this is where we have the last inspection date, the inspection interval, the next inspection date, and the inspection type. We're not going to worry about these for the moment. In the main part of this screen, we have the current rent record. In CHINTARO, we always put the rent specific to a room. Because the majority of CHINTARO organisations charge different rents depending on who is in the room or tenantable unit, we usually manage this screen when we create the tenancy. So at this stage, when you are adding the room, we probably don't know what the rent will be charged at. If you do know, and you are charging flat rates for example, you can put it in now. But we will leave this for now and we'll have a look at this in the session regarding tenancies. So for now, we'll click Update. And we can see now that on this property, we have one 2-bedroom townhouse, vacant tenantable. So this is how your properties will look if you have single tenancies. So let's go back to our previous screen. And we'll now have a look at the Challenger Surfboard Factory. So if we double click on the name, we can see that this property is a rooming house property. And we can see the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. We can see the status of the rooms and who the tenant is. So each of these rooms is one tenancy agreement in the property. Now we can go back to our property at Lygon 3. I'll just change the sorted by field to go back to the name of the property instead of address. And we have our one room that we are going to put John Lennon in from our previous session, but we won't do that until we have a look at tenancies. Now we come to the alerts, tags, disability modifications, construction, utilities, and tenant alteration boxes, and all of these work in the same way. These are all types of tags. So if we double click in the tags section, we get the tags that relate to properties. So we may want to tag our properties in certain ways. These tags are usually used in large organisations where there is a lot of properties to manage and they want to be able to group properties by certain characteristics that aren't recognised in other fields on our screen. So we may want to say that this property has no front fence and there are no pets allowed. Just like we would with client tags, we double click on the tag that we require and they will move from the available tags column to the selected tags column. When we are done, we just press exit. Same with alerts, we just double click to bring up the alerts. And these alerts imply some sort of danger. So this may be that this house has some mould, and if a tradesperson is going to the property, they may need to know there is mould or any other kind of danger. You could also set up alerts such as don't tenant anyone in this property, but we will just choose the mould alert for now. And then press exit. The next 4 tags are just more specific types of tags that we can record. If you wanted to record the specific characteristics of a property, you are able to do so. We can use the disability modifications if you're handling tenants with disabilities and you want to record what modifications have been made to a property. In this property, we have a shower rail and a front wheelchair ramp. All of these tags are easily added into CHINTARO via our system maintenance and reference tables. Construction details is just another tag to show the construction details of the property, and this property has a tiled roof. If you want to record the utilities that you have in a property, you can do so also. We'll say that this property has a smart meter and it also has solar panels. Tenant alterations that have been made can be recorded also. These are the alterations that the tenant makes, and we'll say in this property, the tenants have put in a letterbox and a dishwasher. So you can use these tags if they are relevant to your organisation, but like most things in CHINTARO, use the fields that are relevant to you and leave them blank if they're irrelevant. Below this, we have the Related Links section. This works in the same way that the Related Links works in the client record. The Related Links section allows us to keep information that is stored on our computer network and attach it to the record in CHINTARO. So we're going to add our link to a property. We can either double click where it says Related Links, or we can click Add Link. We type in the name of the folder, and we'll call this one Property Photos. Then we click underneath the word link, hold down Ctrl and K like it says here. We find our folder, and then we click OK. Now we can see this folder appears as a hyperlink in our system, and when we click it, we are taken directly to that folder on our network. So the next thing we see here is notes, and as I mentioned before, adding notes on the property is the same as adding a client note. If we click on Add Note, we see pretty much the same note screen come up. So we're not going to worry about adding notes for now, as we covered this in detail in our earlier session. Now let's have a look at the additional data functions on the property screen. The first function is the inspections function. This is where we will have a record of the inspections that are due or for review in a property. We don't currently have any inspections because we've just created this property. The next function is the keys function. So if we click on that, we will see a list of keys that we have entered for the property. Currently there are none, so let's add one now. We click on the Add Key button here, and this screen opens up. The property name will be automatically populated with the property that we are in this case, Lygon 3. We can select the location that the key is used for, and let's say that this is a front door key. We can enter the tag of the key, for example A1234, and a replacement code if it is a security key or if it has a particular code for a property. You can enter these details here. You can include the letterbox, kitchen cupboard, or window details if they are appropriate, and any additional comments about that particular key that you would like to make. If you have ordered a replacement key, you might like to record this also by ticking the Ordered box here. Once we have entered all of the information about the particular key, we can click Update, and then we can see the information about the key is now in CHINTARO. We can add as many keys to the property as you would like. The next function is the inventory function. The inventory is the ability for us to store the inventory of a property. So when we say inventory, we mean all of the items in the property that we want to keep track of. Generally, this will be limited to things that you are going to be providing regular maintenance on or that you're responsible for maintaining. So these will be things like your stove, hot water service, heating and cooling if you have them, and these types of major appliances that you want to keep track of. We're going to talk more about these in a later session when we look at property maintenance, because inventory and maintenance are tied together. Some organisations do not keep their inventory items in CHINTARO, and you may have another system that you use to keep track of your assets or inventory items, or this may not be important to your organisation. If this is the case, don't worry about inventory items. If you're new to an organisation, there will most likely be a convention in place as to whether you do or do not enter inventory items, so talk to the others and see what they are doing. We can add mortgage details if we're responsible for mortgages on our properties. Clicking on the mortgage function will bring up this screen. This is where we can enter the details of 2 mortgages, including the name and address, mortgage 1 number, mortgage 1 amount, the payment, the frequency, and the payment status. We can also enter the purchase price and guarantee dates up here. We also have a screen here to record the insurance details if we are responsible for insuring our property. So we may want to keep a record of these details. Clicking on the insurance details will bring up this screen where you can enter in the insurer name, insurer address, the phone number, the insurance type, policy number, insured value of the property, and the expiry date of the insurance. The lease details function is where we keep the lease information regarding us leasing the property from someone else. So if we are leasing this property from the state government, or we're leasing the property from a local real estate agent, or if we're leasing the property from an owner, we would enter the details of the lease in here. So this has nothing to do with our clients leasing from us. It is if we are leasing a property from someone else. So we can put in a start date from today. The lease term can be 10 years. The lease payment will be $200 a week. The frequency will be weekly. And the payment status is ongoing. The rates function allows us to record when our water and council rates are due. So let's say in 3 months we have water rates due. So this is going to be $300 on the 24th of the 9th, 2015. And council rates for $350 on the same date of the 24th of the 9th, 2015. The property charges function will be covered after we complete the session where we look at tenancies. The maintenance and forecast functions will be covered in the session on maintenance. The other rooms and additional detail functions here are forms that aren't used often and are not going to be covered in this session. Room details will take us back to the default view, and this is the record of rooms in our properties. The property transactions is where we record all of the transactions made against the property. We don't have any transactions in this property yet, so let's go into another property and have a look at their property transaction screen. This time, we'll have a look at Egyptian Walk. So we can see here that there are a number of transactions. Each entry has a date, with the most recent transaction at the top and the oldest at the bottom. Each transaction has a transaction type, so we can see that there are rents here and management fees here. We can see that each transaction has a comment that explains what the transaction is. And each transaction has an amount. Black indicates a credit for the property, which means it's income for the property, and red means that it's a debit or an expense for the property. We can see that the accumulated rents are black as they are income that we've made on the property. Accumulated rents is a collected transaction which is accrued from all the rent transactions on the tenancy for the property. At the bottom of the screen, we can see a total or balance of the transactions that has added up all of the income and expenditure of the property. So we can enter in a transaction manually by clicking the Enter Transaction button. Let's say that we have to pay council rates and we would like to add that transaction to this property. We click on the Transaction Type drop-down box and we will select Council Rates. The default date is today's date, but we could amend this if we needed to. We then enter the amount that we paid here, for example $350. And we don't have an invoice or check number, but we could put them in if we had them. And we'll put in additional comments, council rates payment. When we are finished, we click Add. And we can see here that there is a new transaction showing in red, meaning it has been a debit against this property. We can also see down here that the balance has been automatically updated to reflect the deduction of $350. We can print this transaction ledger by clicking on Print Ledger. If we wanted to put in a start date, we can, say for the last month, or if we wanted to print all records, leave this blank. We then click Continue, and we can see the print preview for the property ledger. Click Print to print, and close to return to the property transaction screen. We could also export this data to Excel if we wanted to use it outside of CHINTARO. To do so, we would just click Export Transactions, and an Excel spreadsheet would come up with our data. Some of these transactions are generated automatically, for example rent, and if we generate rent, an accumulated rent transaction is added to the property transaction screen. Centrepay fees can be added automatically when we import Centrepay if we allow that parameter that enables this function. So now let's go back to our property at Lygon 3. And we can see all of the changes that we have made in this section. So in the bottom left of our screen, we can see that the record was entered on the 24th of the 6th. It was last changed on the 26th of the 6th. It was updated by SA. And if we click the button with the three little dots on it, it brings up the audit history again. So now we've covered all there is to know about the property screen. If you've missed anything or want to recap on a certain section of the screen without watching this whole video again, please have a look at the e-learning videos on the CHINTARO website, www.chintaro.com.au, where you'll be able to refresh your memory on each section of the screen. The e-learning videos are up to 15 minutes in length and cover everything I've shown you today in more detail. In the next session, we'll be having a look at how to tenant a client into a property.